Okay. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the PGCE Fair and to the sharing of the Master of Education specializing in curriculum and teaching. I know it's a long name, so let's call it MCT for short. My name is Associate Professor Leonel Lim, and I am the program leader. In the next couple of minutes, let me share a little bit on the key focus of the program. Let me share on the schedule of courses that students can look forward to taking. And let me also share a little bit about the profile of students. Hopefully you can join us. I know this is in Singapore. Those of us who are in Singapore, this is now open house season for secondary schools. And I bring my kids for the open houses too. They are one of them is in primary 6. And when you go to the open house, what do you want to do? You want to look at the planned curriculum. You want to see what they are teaching, right? What is their curriculum philosophy? What do they actually do? But you also want to have a sense of the received curriculum. What have they taught? How has it been transformative? And one way to think about it is that the received curriculum is often embodied in the students that you meet at the places. So I have kindly asked for a couple of our alumni to come back to join us in this little sharing and to share with you on their experiences. So we'll want to leave some time for them too. All right. So before we begin, it may be worth looking at the end in mind. And on this picture that you have here is our recent graduation, just last year. And this is the cohort of our M@C&T or MCT students. There were roughly about 45, 50 of them, right? Not all of them are here. Some of them come from overseas and they unfortunately didn't stay for convocation, but those of them who are here can see their really happy faces, right? So I look forward to you guys joining us at some point. All right, let's go forward. Please let me know if my slides aren't advancing. All right. So the key focus of the MSc&T program is really what do we teach, right? And what knowledge is of the most worth? Who decides what to teach in my classroom? And how do we know students have learned what is taught? That is a question on assessment, right? And of course, how do we develop professionally as teachers, educators, and work as a community for professional change? These are very overarching questions. They cover areas of curriculum, teaching, learning, and assessment. And one really novel and powerful approach of our program is that it weaves together these four various areas or strengths: curriculum, to look at curriculum theory, design, implementation, curriculum change or reform. What do we mean when we talk about curriculum? How do students experience and receive the curriculum? Also, we look at the role of assessment in service of curriculum. How do we prepare teachers to be, better, stronger, more adept at assessment literacy in service of curriculum, assessment leadership, and how do we develop, identify innovative assessment practices? We look at teaching. How do we teach pedagogies, teachers' own conditions of work too, the teachers' growth and teachers' research as well. And we look at students for whom we are there. And we look at approaches to understanding our students more holistically, looking at social and cultural diversity and its implications for our classroom teaching and learning. Much of what I say can be found on the NIE MSc&T website, but I would try to reorganize it slightly differently so that you can have a more visceral sense of how your progression in the program would go. There are a number of courses that will be core, some will be compulsory, and then you have the required specializations, and then there are electives. So if you look at the slide that we have on hand, the very colorful table, you will see that you'll be taking 8 courses in the program. And 8 courses, typically for full-timers, it will be 1 year or 2 semesters. And if you're a part-timer, you will take up to 4 years, I think. But most people would finish it in around 2 years or 4 semesters. So the schedule of courses are roughly as follows. You'll be taking the MET core courses, the top 2, 1 and 2, right? These are your kind of your research courses, research methods courses. And you will take one compulsory specialization course, which is MCT 901, Curriculum Theories and Issues, which really speak to a breadth, the breadth of the various strands that we will encounter later on. You will then also go into the required specializations, MCT 902, 903 assessment, 904 on teaching, 905 on learning. So you can see that when we talk about various strands, we are looking downwards in terms of depth, providing depth. You'll be doing one required course on curriculum, another on assessment, and on teaching and learning. So of these four, you would choose two, at least two. Okay, at least two. So you have both breadth, and later we go into in the electives, you have depth. So when you go into the electives, there are so many electives here. Their offerings change from semester to semester as well, but by and large, we have a number of these for you to choose from, and you'll be looking at specializing in you can take two from any of these areas. Okay. And then finally, you have an open elective, which can be taken from any of the master programs. And these electives can also include the above MSc required or elective courses. Right? I would suggest that folks, if you want to do a screenshot, take a screenshot of this first. It's much easier and convenient for your reference later on. Okay. All right. Let me go on. Our specialization courses are conducted every semester, and electives, on the other hand, are offered on alternate semesters and subject to change. All courses run for 13 weeks and are conducted in the evenings from 5:30 or 6 p.m. for 3 hours, right? And I know we get a lot of questions about this. What is the mode of courses? Well, they often are hybrid. So in 13 weeks, you have a couple of weeks that are online, asynchronous, some are synchronous online, and then you have a majority would be face-to-face. And the face-to-face are all conducted at NIE. And we also get a lot of questions around here, which is how do we develop assessments, assignments. These include online forums, blogs, reflections, and so on, group presentations, and then of course sometimes longer term essays of 3,000, 4,000 words as well. These are poster presentations of some of our previous students right over here. We go into some of the study plans. So this is for a full-time one year full-time student. So in each semester they will be doing 4 courses. We typically recommend that they take MED 900 and 901, right? And then they choose from the required specialization courses. Again, feel free to take screenshots, right? And then in semester 2 they go into electives. Right, and an open elective, and the last one will be your integrative project, which is really a capstone, drawing together your learnings from the various courses. Okay, and then part-time students, you break the 8 courses into 4 semesters. Again, we encourage you to take the core courses first, and then the required, then the electives, and then the open elective last. Okay. So I'm approaching the end of my slides. I want to just share with you what are some reasons for joining us. I think a lot of our faculty teaching this program are really excellent academic scholars. They are really internationally renowned in the areas of research. I won't say more here. Look up our faculty webpage on NTU, and you'll see the kinds of work and research that they have been doing. I think our colleagues, faculty, are also extremely adept at teaching, very skillful and reflective. There is something to be said about you guys coming here, undergoing a curriculum, a course of study from people who are researching, who are experts in the area of curriculum, right? So I think it should be transformative. And then to also, our faculty are also very, very actively involved in classroom research, classroom professional development, and also policy dialogues with the state, MOE, and so on. Who are our students? Well, students are really, they are from local and they are from overseas practitioners. They are from primary schools. They span the gamut, primary schools, secondary schools, post-secondary institutions, early childhood education, tuition enrichment centers, and we also have a number of nurse educators. In the past, we even had Singapore Airlines SQ stewardesses or stewards who are involved in the training programs at SIA. We also have army officers. We have we have people who are involved in institutional training, right, and developing that training. Okay, I want to move ahead. I'll leave this last couple of points around passion, dynamic learning environments. I won't go through that. But the last thing I want to share with you is that I think through this program, our students come to see teaching as really a complex intellectual activity. We introduce you to the theories, to the issues on hand, and to the practice, the um, issues in practice around teaching. How do we teach? What do we teach, and why do we teach in the ways that we teach? Many of the issue series that we highlight to you should find resonance in the work that you do, right? And these are some of the perspectives of our former students, right? They have kindly, shared some of their points with us. We have master teachers from MOE. We have principals and former principals from MOE schools. We have lecturers from polytechnics. So this is just a sample of the kinds of students that we have, right? I'll share a bit more from hearing two more of our students later. Last but not least, entry requirements. This is again another question that's always asked. We ask for a good bachelor's degree from a recognized university or a relevant NTU Flexi Masters with good grades. We also ask for a teaching qualification such as the PGDE from NIE, or from another university that also provides teacher training, and then at least 1 year of teaching experience. If you don't have that teaching qualification, right, we ask for 3 years of teaching experience or other relevant working experience in education. For applicants who do not have, whose degree is not conducted in English, then there are additional English language proficiency requirements, and there they are. And again, questions on tuition fees are best looked at the NTU webpage. With that said, I'm going to turn attention to our two alumni. We have Mark and we have Tyree. Can we ask for Tyree to begin sharing first? A little bit about your experiences in the MSc program. Thank you, Tyree.
Hi everyone. Yeah, okay. Good morning everyone. I'm Tyree. I'm actually a teacher in secondary school. I teach physical education. So I joined the MCT program about 5 years ago. So when I first joined, right, I honestly thought that the curriculum was mainly about syllabuses, lesson plans, scheme of work, and assessment. So I think that as teachers, we are very used to operating within the daily routines of school life, such as teaching classes, planning programs, managing events, and students as well. So I thought the MCT program would be similar to initial teacher training, just at an advanced level, teaching me how to plan better lessons, better assessments, manage classroom. So for those who are not familiar, initial teacher training is a program in Singapore to provide teachers with foundational skills and dispositions to prepare us for teaching. So it does. So the MCT program, it does cover some aspects of practical teaching and planning, but I think I was also pleasantly surprised that the program also challenged me to think beyond that. So what do I mean by this? One of the biggest impacts the program had on me was to develop was developing a deeper understanding of curriculum. So as not just as a content delivery, but as something connected to the values of the society, policy, power, and the broader purposes of education. So it helped me to think about questions like why are specific parts of curriculum of the particular curriculum chosen to be taught? So who benefits from particular policies and practices? What messages are these students receiving through our programs and assessments? So I think this shift in thinking changed the way I approach my work in school. So, for example, in my current role, I'm involved in leading professional learning and curriculum discussions within the PE department. And I think the research and academic skills from the program, especially when it comes to critical thinking, reading research, and academic writing, have helped me to contribute more meaningfully to our conversations within the department about pedagogy, assessment, student development. So instead of just focusing on the usual, how do we run this program, right? I now also think about what is the educational purpose behind this program and how can we improve it meaningfully for the students. So it's becomes not just about achieving student outcomes and running good programs, but also about what groups of students are we marginalizing by our existing practices and how can we make improvements. So I think another thing which I really appreciated was learning alongside classmates from very diverse educational backgrounds. I think Prof. Lim has shared that we have students and classmates from all over the place in Singapore and also from other countries, different schools, government and private bodies. So I think sometimes the most valuable learning actually came from the discussions in class, which was very enriching. And and also when we suffered together during assignment submissions. So I think hearing about how different systems approach teaching and learning broaden my perspectives as a teacher. I think it's also important to add that beyond just the qualifications and career progression, the biggest takeaway for me was that the program helped me to discover the intellectual side of teaching. So it reminded me that as teachers, we are not just the implementers of policy, but we are also thinkers. We need to reflect on our practice, and we are people who can also contribute to the shaping of education lah. So I think if you are considering the program, I think be prepared to think deeply beyond just lesson planning and really just question the assumptions and probably lose some sleep and some time with your kids during assignment periods, especially if you are doing part-time, but also prepared to grow professionally and personally lah. All right, that's all for my part. Prof, we can't hear you.
I don't think we can hear you, but why not I just go ahead anyway? Yeah, so hi everyone. My name is Mark. I am currently a lecturer at Polytechnic and I teach courses in media and design. I also hold some leadership positions in my school involving course management, outreach, industry engagement, and projects. So I graduated from MCT last year as a part-time student focusing on the curriculum strand. I must say it was tough, but the whole experience was very enjoyable and rewarding. And maybe let me talk about it, how it benefited me in three ways. Firstly, as a teacher, the program really gave me a lot of awareness about how I can craft more meaningful lessons and assessments. It really came not just from learning about the different theories and perspectives of education, policies and its issues, but also from the many discussions like what Tayu was saying earlier, the many discussions with classmates from various schools in Singapore, from all sorts of institutions like the army, hospitals, from institutions from all around the world. I met students from China, from Myanmar, from Indonesia, and many more. And I think it's really interesting to discuss how we can apply what we learned in the workplace in practical and meaningful ways as well. So I really benefited from that in my role as a teacher. And as someone with leadership roles in my school also, the program has really helped me be more critically aware about the various education policies and initiatives from government and school leaders. So thinking about who are the stakeholders, what are the ideological underpinnings, assumptions made, the potential impact on teachers and students, and even society in general. This has really helped me make better decisions in my leadership role. And lastly, I think on a more personal note, sometimes I think in the day-to-day activities of teaching and admin work, it's over time one can lose sight of the meaning of what we do as teachers. Uh, but I think being in a space where we can actively and critically discuss issues about education, globalization, assessment practices, teacher-student identities is very refreshing and very meaningful. And it's a bit like sometimes when a magnet loses, a compass loses its polarity, so you need to remagnetize or repolarize the compass so that it can find its bearings and its north again. So it was a bit like that for me. So I think the program was really beneficial and very enjoyable and rewarding. And I hope you'll consider this program as well. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mark. Thanks, Mark and Tyree. I hope you guys can hear me now, right? Right. Okay.
Thanks, Lionel.
Yeah.
Okay, you can see my slides? Yeah, okay. Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Jonathan Goh. I'm the program leader for the Masters of Arts Educational Leadership Program. A little bit about myself. I'm the assistant head as well, overseeing the programs. I currently oversee two programs. Some of you may be confused and you'll be wondering why there's a Masters of Art Educational Management program as well as an educational leadership. Well, just to clear that confusion, the educational management is the previous program and it's still ongoing, but we're finalizing this program. In fact, the new program that we are talking about now, which is basically just launched this year, is the educational leadership program that you all be interested in. This is essentially my department's leadership team. Our head is led by Dr. Jasmine Sim. Dr. Chiang Heng is the deputy head. We have also Dr. Heng, who is the assistant head and of course Dr. Jason Tan and myself. Okay, what's really interesting about this program, I don't have to tell you we're in this era where we are faced with a lot of changes, very unstable events happening. So all the more, if you think about it, educational leadership is essentially very important in the way we lead organizations. And we have talked about how important it is for leaders to navigate through very to complexity and challenges, drive change. We've heard of all this. And most importantly, I mean, to think about the global implications that we are facing as well. So, really, it's very important for leaders to be able to lead organizations. And this particular program was designed for leaders in education, primarily to look at innovative ways on how we can look at practical applications in the context. And essentially, I think the key here is to be able to drive organizations in an effective way and how we drive our staff as well. And that's essentially the premise for this particular program that we have designed. Okay, so there are a few broad aims of this particular program. We are thinking in a way of modern leadership and evolution and growth. So essentially, we need to go beyond what is traditional. I mean, there's no point talking about, leadership theories, which rightly or wrongly, predominantly is developed in the West, in the US, in Australia, and the UK. But I think it's more important for us, and NIE has been one of the institutions leading the way in terms of research-informed approaches to what we believe are relevant applications. I mean, just a case in point, I'm sure all of you have heard of this notion of empowerment. We need to empower our staff. But what does empowerment really look like in your local school context, whether it may be China, Korea, or even in Singapore for that matter? I mean, if we look at just the definition of empowerment, essentially it means, affording power to staff to make decisions on their own without having the leader being involved. But if you think about in a Singapore context, can that really happen? Now, I'm not saying that empowerment doesn't happen in school. Of course, it does, or even in any organization, leaders will try to involve staff in some kind of discussion or decision making. However, the thing is, can staff members essentially make decisions without the leader? I don't think that's really possible. So, in some ways, leaders do not want um, to give up, their absolute power, but at the same time, their staff, they don't want to have the absolute power as well. I mean, because they want to get involved, but to what extent? So what is this threshold? So when we talk about effective leadership, what do we really mean by that? And that's very, very important, because we can't just look at what Western literature tells us and then we think we can in fact apply it in our local context. That may not work. So basically, a lot of our teaching and a lot of our programs are designed in such a way, right, that we do address traditional leadership theories and development. However, I think the key is also including our research findings and trying to make it more nuanced in terms of its application. Now, you have also the second broad aim, which is to develop critical educational leaders. Here, we are talking about leaders being more informed about critical issues involving educational leadership. For example, we have seen the advent of AI in our organization, and how does that impact leadership? And leaders do have those very traditional sort of challenges, for example, like looking at transition, looking at development, looking at motivation. But at the same time, leaders also need to think about change and how do we change and progress, because when we talk about excellence, it's not an end outcome, it's actually a journey. And when you think about excellence, it's always about constant improvement. So how do we really apply some of these things that we are learning in a strategic way in your various contexts? And when you see the students that we have, they don't just come from education. Of course, I mean, education would be something that we are very familiar, but, we also need to understand in organizations, they do have training and development as well. So that's, in a way, a very broad idea of what we mean by education. Now, the third broad aim, in fact, is to look at evidence-based practices. As I've said to you before, evidence-based would mean relying on what our research informs us. But I think what is more important that we need to really appreciate is the fact that when we talk about data, all right, data needs to be quality data. I mean, we can collect data that's not useful. Now, that's not going to be helpful, because data informs. And when we are informed, we build the knowledge. And when we build the knowledge, we build wisdom. Now, I think that transition is very, very important. So it's garbage in, garbage out, okay? And I think more importantly is when we do any research, and I teach the research methods course in this program, I think it's fundamentally important that you make sure that your study is fundamentally sound and the methodology is defensible, okay? So I think those are very important aspects in how we use these ideas and infuse it into our teaching of the courses. So you will have a chance to read articles from various countries and in different contexts and be critical. I mean, and I think that's the most important thing about this program. It's not about step 1, step 2, or I have to do A, do B, do C. But I think we have to be very critical about what we are reading, what we're seeing, and what we're learning. Okay. And then, of course, the final broad aim is that it does support professional growth. And as well as you will attain certainly a recognized postgraduate degree from NIE. Now, so this is a broad idea of what the program is like. You see, when we designed this particular program, we did it deliberately by looking at what are the areas that we need and what are the causes that we need to support this whole idea on this broad aims that I was talking about. So we have the core causes. There are 2 core causes now. One is the educational research, which is the one that I teach. Essentially, some people may be wondering, why do we want to have educational research? I think it's important because when we look at a master's program, essentially you'll be reading a lot of articles. Now, as I said before, you need to be very critical. Now, by way of understanding how research is conducted, you will definitely be more critical about what you're reading and understanding whether the study is defensible and whether methods are sound. If they are not, then we will question some of the findings that we are reading. And of course, the other course that we have is on theories and perspective of educational leadership. This will give you a broad idea of what educational leadership is. So now you have four strands that we kind of try to categorize our courses so that it will make sense for candidates. Now, the first strand obviously focuses on the educational leader themselves. I mean, so the thing is that we need to think about, ethics. We need to think about interdisciplinary sort of thinking, and in which we would like leaders to develop. And for Strand 2, this is, in fact, one of the key calls, which is essentially leading in educational policies as well as teaching and learning. Of course, the focus here differs from what Professor Leonel Lim talked about earlier, but although I'm sure he would agree that there's definitely aspects of leadership in the MCT program as well. But in this particular program, it's not so much about curriculum, pedagogy, and assessment per se, but rather how you lead them. So that's the slight emphasis here. So you have courses about educational policy and reform and improvement. You have courses on looking at globalization as well. And then you have courses on curriculum and instructional leadership, which essentially looks at how you see, as I said, it's all about leadership of teaching and learning. So we need to align our teaching and learning to school vision. We need to lead in teaching and learning. We need to create a conducive environment for teaching and learning, or even in this case, training and development. Now, for Strength 3, here we talk about more the organizational aspects of leadership. Here we have leading educational transformation, as well as educational marketing, and of course, developing organizational culture. Now, the fourth area here is specifically focused at people. So it's people development. So you have here things like teacher professional development, or in this case, trainers professional development. And then you have leading learning communities, or PLCs, if you like. And of course, we have to have coaching and mentoring, as well as looking at the overall well-being of the individual. So all this, come together as a program. And what we try to do is essentially to plan some of these courses to be offered at least one from each strand every semester, so that you have a choice. And in some ways, being graduate students, it's up to us to, apart from doing the core, you will be able to kind of customize your own learning, if you like. Now, not all courses will be offered at the time that you wish, but at least you do have choices to read some of these courses. These are our faculty members who will be involved in the program. As you see, Prof. Leonel Lim is also there. He's teaching one of the courses, and we have a few others. And essentially, I mean, we're very fortunate to have a team of people with the relevant expertise, to lead in this particular program. Okay, just to give you an idea about the structure. For the routes, we have two routes that you can decide. One is a coursework route, and then the other is a dissertation. Now, for those of you planning to do higher degree, for example, especially PhDs, Doctor of Philosophy, I would encourage you to think or to consider the dissertation route, because the thing is, for PhD, it's slightly different from Doctor of Education, because Doctor of Education, the emphasis is not so much on having a strong research background, but for a PhD, you're required to do that. And for PhD, you're more independent, if you like, whereas for the Doctor of Education, it's more of a structured sort of approach to dissertation writing. Okay, so these are the two routes that you can consider. Now, for core courses, essentially they are identical for both routes. Okay, so you have to do the one on research methods, as well as the one on theories and perspective of educational leadership. So they're exactly the same. Now, for electives, you have that option. Okay, if you're doing coursework, you do 5 courses of your choice. Okay, and for dissertation, you would do 4. And we all want to have this research component, as I said, because it does kind of prepare you to kind of consolidate your learning, if you like. So for coursework, we have this particular course, which is 2 AUs. AUs means academic units. That's critical inquiry. So it's basically like a milestone course where you write a proposal, a research proposal, but that's not a full dissertation, meaning you don't collect data, you don't analyze, you're just writing a proposal to demonstrate your learning and understanding of the what you have studied so far. But for the dissertation route, you have to do a dissertation, okay, and that's 6 AUs. Now, to give you an idea, all courses will be conducted in the evenings. I think there was a question about whether it can be in the day. The thing is, what I can tell you, it is conducted in the evenings, normally from 5:30 to 8:30 or from 6 to 9 p.m. Okay, but I do know of some situations where it happens that all the students signing up for this course are full-time students. Now, then they would have some flexibility to negotiate with the lecturer to see if it's possible to conduct classes in the afternoon rather than in the evening. But if you have part-time students, because they, as Prof. Liner pointed out, it's important for students, not only part-time, full-time, but as well as international and local to interact and learn from each other. So unfortunately, if you have part-time students in your particular course that you have signed up for, you will have to do it in the evening. Now, we will also adopt a blended learning approach, which means in person or online. Now, of course, in person will be conducted in NIE. Okay, so the period of candidature for full-time, it'll be 1 to 2 years. But normally for students who are on scholarship, it will be 1 year because the scholarship is 1 year. So what you would do is four courses in the first semester and then 4 courses in the second semester, and you complete your master's in a year. But if you're not on scholarship, you have up to 2 years. For part-time students, you have 2 years minimum and maximum 4 years. So that you have to plan your courses carefully, all right? But if you're thinking of completing in 2 years, then you probably wouldn't want to take one course per semester because that would take too long. Okay, so you plan your courses properly. Now, the admission criteria here is, of course, a good bachelor's degree or a good grades for Flexi Masters. And of course, we have a additional criteria here, a criterion here, which is at least 2 years of managerial or supervisory experience. I know I saw a question here, and I want to let you know it's I think here we have some flexibility. We have some latitude for flexibility. We're not talking about the fact that you have to be a leader now, as long as you have prior experience or in some supervisory capacity. So you don't, as long as you can demonstrate that you have. Now, the reason why we want that is because I think having leadership experience is important for you to engage in the discussion. At least you have led some people in whatever capacity. So we will have that flexibility rather than it being a mandatory sort of reasoning that you have to be a leader of an official position. Okay, I hope that clarifies. Now, of course, our candidates, as I've said, they come from local, meaning Singaporeans, as well as overseas students. And we had a very interesting mix. I mean, at least in the educational management program, we had students from Indonesia, Kazakhstan, China, quite a lot. We have a lot of Chinese students. But mainly they do come from education, but we also had a few from nursing, and in fact quite a number from military because we have this transfer credit program with the Singapore Armed Forces. So we have people from the Navy, from the Air Force, as well as from the Army. And of course, we have people from government agencies, from ministries. We have people from Home Affairs, for example, in this particular program, or even in Ministry of Finance. So we have quite an interesting mix of leaders, and these leaders, as I've said, we don't want to position it as a very exclusive sort of leadership program, in a sense that we're only targeting as CEOs or principals or whatever. I mean, we have people who are in fact level heads or even heads of department, 1 year, 2 years, that sort of experience, and we have them in the program. So just to put you at ease. Now, for those who are whose first language is not English, and for overseas students, we do have some requirements for English proficiency, and as you can see there, we do look at TOEFL as well as IELTS, and that they have those specification there. Now, there's a source from NTU you can refer to, to get a better idea about the requirements. I think this is important because in the past we do have students that struggle because of language, and I think that would affect that learning. But of course, our professors are all very sympathetic and understanding. Some of them can even code switch and speak in Mandarin or whatever language, Malay, if they could. So we will of course try that, but just keep in mind that if you do struggle, and we teach it predominantly in English anyway. So if you do struggle, it may be an issue. But of course, if you think you're okay and you've met the requirement, that should be fine. So I've come to the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for your attention. I hope you are sufficiently interested in the Educational Leadership Program. I'm open to questions now.